Does the name Harold Camping ring a bell to anybody? Our children wouldn't recognize him, but some of the adults may. Harold Camping was the most recent in a long line of doomsday prophets who have been popular in the past 150, 200 years, who claim to have been able to read the Bible and figure out from that when Jesus is returning in glory. And they do such things as they count the begats in the Bible, multiply by how many times such and such a word appears in the prophet Joel, and divide that by the number of words in the prophet Isaiah, take the square root and all these other things and say, and I figured it out. This is when Jesus is returning in glory. And it's absolutely absurd. Unfortunately, people listen to them. And in fact, one of the groups that does that, if you want something to say to those pesky Jehovah's Witnesses who show up at your door and you want to get rid of them quickly, just say this to them. When they open the door, you say, "Oh, I'm very happy you're here." And now you've got their attention because they think that maybe they found a convert or something in you. And you say, "I've been meaning to ask you a question. When are you forecasting now the end of the world to take place? Because you forecast it 10 times now, and you've been wrong every single time. So if you've been wrong about then 10 times, how can I trust anything you tell me is the truth? Thank you very much, good day," and close the door. And so it's a very easy way of getting rid of them. But be that as it may, Harold Camping came along, and he had about 4 or 5 different times he claimed the world was coming to an end. The first, I think, was in 1994, and he had a following, and because he had connections, he had people who listened to him, and he could get his message out. And of course, 1994 came and went, and it didn't happen, and he said, "All right, I made a few mistakes," but he changed the things again one time or another, got it wrong each time, but finally, the last one he did, he says, "This is absolutely certain. There's no doubt about it. The world will come to an end on May 21st, 2011. And this is what he said, to quote him. He said, "On May 21st, 2011, the saved would be taken up to heaven in the rapture, and that there would follow 5 months of fire, brimstone, and plagues on earth, with millions of people dying each day, culminating on October 21st, 2011, with the final destruction of the world." And many people, even good Catholics, were believing him and being taken up in all this. And the newspapers covered him. I remember one of the New York newspapers doing a story about a man on Staten Island who spent his life savings, $145,000, buying placards and billboards and everything, trying to warn people to get ready because Jesus was returning on May 21st. And even, I remember one time, I was in St. Anne's at the time, and it was later in the evening, I was watching TV in my room, and my phone rang, and it was a parishioner who said to me, "Father, are you in your room?" I said, "Yes." He goes, "Could you come across the street to the pizzeria? We really need your help." So I came over to the pizzeria, and there was a man there who was a daily communicant, a faithful Catholic who was absolutely convinced that everything Harold Camping said was right. And he goes, "But it's so clear in the Bible, it's obviously there." And I tried to do everything I could to try to tell him, don't listen to these guys. Doesn't Jesus say, beware, people will come along claiming I am he and the time is at hand. Do not follow them. That's what's clear in the scriptures. The line in today's gospel, "But as of the day or hour, no one knows, neither the angels in heaven nor the Son, but only the Father." And so no one knows the time of Jesus' return in glory. So there's nothing in the Bible that's trying to help you figure it out. But he was convinced, and nothing we say made a difference with him. The only thing that convinced him when Harold Camping was wrong was when May 22nd came along. And then, of course, after that, right away, the newspapers asked him, "Hey, Harold, what happened here?" He goes, "Oh, well, I made some mistakes, but I'm absolutely certain about October 21st. That's definitely when the earth will be destroyed." And, of course, then October 22nd came, and the earth was still there, and finally people realized that Harold Camping didn't know what he was talking about. And the newspapers got a hold of this man in Staten Island, and they interviewed him again, and he says, "I can't understand it. It was so clear in the Bible." And I'd like to ask, where is it clear in the Bible? If it were so clear in the Bible, we wouldn't need them to tell us about it, would we? We would read it for ourselves. But they were convinced that there was some sort of secret code, read this, do that, that only certain people would be able to figure out. And whether they realize it or not, that's just a new form of the ancient heresy of Gnosticism that goes all the way back to the days of the apostles. People believing that there's a secret knowledge that Jesus gives of salvation only to a few people. St. Paul was talking against it in some of his writings. And it's an ancient heresy that still keeps coming up once in a while. No, my friends, there are no secret codes in the Bible. There is nothing in there that if you read this and do that, you can figure out when Jesus is returning in glory. What is clear in the Bible is when Jesus says, time will come when people say, I am he, and the time is at hand. Do not follow them. That Jesus says 3 different times in the scriptures. Do not follow these people. So when you hear of people coming along claiming they figured out secret things about when Jesus is returning in glory, the first thing you know is they're frauds, because there is nothing at all in the scriptures like that. That's not what the Bible is about, and that's not what the Lord intends. But the question I'd like to ask is, why are these people so obsessed? And many of them are, that's the best word to use, obsessed with trying to figure out when Jesus is returning in glory. Another one I remember when I was a boy, Hal Lindsey, who's still preaching, who wrote the book, The Late Great Planet Earth, and he was talking about the tribulation versus the rapture. He had proof of this and that, all the stuff from the scriptures, and they completely misunderstand the book of Revelation. They don't understand what it was about. It's a type of literature known as apocalyptic literature. Jesus uses some of it today in our gospel reading, which was a specific type of thing that only the people at that time would completely understand. It's lost to us because we don't know a lot of the references and the nuances of what was written there, but they read it as if it's a certain absolute forecast, and they believe that they have everything all figured out, or they'll listen to Nostradamus, or all these other people with all these strange things. And my question is, why? Why do we have to be so obsessed with trying to figure out when Jesus returns in glory? I think some of it is because people want to make sure they're prepared for that day, that they're not caught off guard. But you know what? That's when Jesus returns in glory, and you and I may not live until that day. We may die before then. In fact, it's likely we will. And when we die, that is our particular judgment. That's when you and I stand in judgment before the Lord. And sometimes people know that their time is coming. Maybe they're very elderly and they realize they don't have another 20 years to live, and so they start looking already from now. Or somebody, maybe the doctor has told him he has an illness and only has a month or so to live. And that may happen, but most people really don't know. We don't have any knowledge of when we're going to die. In fact, some people, especially if they die in an accident or something, get up for their normal day, having not for a moment realizing it was going to be their last day on this earth. And if they stand before the Lord in judgment at that moment, and they say to him, well, Lord, if you'd only told me I was going to die today, I might have done something differently. I'd have gone to confession. I'd have been better, something like that. And maybe what we're seeing is we're trying to think that God is somehow playing some trick on us, that he's trying to catch us with something. And the first thing to remember is that Jesus says to us, do not live in fear, little flock. It has pleased your Father to give you the kingdom. Jesus is trying to get us into heaven, not keep us out. He's not trying to trick us. He's not looking for somebody who's a good, faithful Catholic, and the minute they're doing something wrong, he's going to take them and say, aha, see, I caught you. That's not what he does. It's not the way the Lord works. He's showing us how to follow him each and every day so that we're ready for him. And if we just follow what the Lord says and do what he tells us to do, we're golden. We have nothing to worry about. St. Charles Borromeo, who was the Cardinal Archbishop of Milan, the story is told that he and some priests were sitting around one day talking. They were playing a game of cards and talking precisely about this issue. What would happen if you knew Jesus was returning in glory tomorrow? And one by one, they all started saying, I do this, I do that. And the cardinal said, I just continue playing cards. And he wasn't being smug or callous about his salvation. No, he knew he was living a good, faithful life following the Lord. And whether he knew when Jesus was returning in glory or knew when he was going to die, it wouldn't matter. Because when he died, he'd be ready to follow the Lord. And that's the lesson he gives us. He's not trying to catch us in something like a teacher who is trying to trick their students. Imagine a good teacher who tells the students, hey, this is what's on your final exam. It will cover from this period to that, whatever it may be. Study all this information, know it well, and you'll ace the exam. And of course, the exam comes and the teacher gives them that, and they ace it. And that's hopefully what the teacher wants them to do. Of course, once in a while you do come across a teacher who loves to throw a trick question at somebody, and or something like that, almost to catch them off guard. I often think it's just that the teacher is just trying to show who's boss. Just remember, I know more than you do about this. But a teacher who's trying to make their students fail, I don't think should be a teacher. The teacher is supposed to be helping the students pass. And Jesus does that with us. He shows us what we need to do and says, follow me, and don't listen to your own ideas, but what I tell you, and you'll be golden. And if we wake up every morning and just say, Lord, thank you for this day, for helping me get through the night, that I'm alive again another day. Help me to serve you throughout this day and live this day as you would have me do. And then at the end of the day, look back on our day and say, thanks to the Lord for the things we did well. And if we messed up in anything, apologize and say, Lord, help me to do better tomorrow. And we pray every day, come to Mass faithfully, receive communion and confession frequently, and we're golden. We're ready to go. And it won't matter for us whether or not we know the time of Jesus' return in glory or the time of our own death. He does not want us living in fear of that. As he says, do not live in fear, little flock. I'm told that it says those words 365 times in the scriptures. We hear, do not be afraid, once for every day of the year. We hear it, for example, when the angel Gabriel came to Mary. Fear not, do not be afraid, Mary. The angel coming to the shepherds. Fear not, for behold, I give you good tidings. Jesus, when he walked on the water and the apostles were terrified, he says, do not be afraid, it is I. Over and over and over again, the Lord tells us, do not be afraid. He wants us to be joyful people. He wants us to enjoy our time here on earth, but remembering that we ultimately live for heaven. And we will ultimately stand in judgment before him. But if we're following the Lord faithfully each and every day, we won't have to worry about whether or not we knew the hour of our death or Jesus' return in glory. Whether we know it or not, when we die and stand before him, we will hear him say to us, well done, brave and faithful servant. Inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. May Jesus Christ be praised, now and forever.